Blue Revolution, I want to introduce you to a great guest that we have on here today on the Blue Revolution show, Jamil Favors, who is the Deputy Director and Voter Protection expert at the Democratic Party of Georgia. And Jamil was introduced to me through the John Ossoff campaign. And Jamil, it is really wonderful to have you here with us at Blue Revolution. Thank you so much for coming on with us.
Thank you so much as well, Dan. It is an absolute pleasure. I've been following the work that you all have been doing for some time. So just to get the opportunity to be here to speak with you, anytime we get an opportunity to talk about Georgia and get people engaged, I want to be there and I want to do that because it's just that exciting and there's just that much work to be done.
Yeah, there is a lot of excitement, and I really look forward to hearing what you have to say about your work that you're doing down there. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you yourself got into politics and into political work.
Okay, it's funny that you asked that question. I Right above me are my yearbooks, and I just happened to be looking at my high school yearbook that I got from my mom's house a couple of weeks ago, and I just scrolled, just like going through it, and there's a picture in there where I say, "What do you want to do in the future?" And I say, "Help make a change." That was Jamil at 17. I had no idea what that meant. So 14 years later, I do think I'm finding a way out to do that. So I'm an Atlanta native. I went to Howard University undergrad where I studied accounting. After that, I was an accountant and a consultant in New York for a number of years. Then I went off to law school at the University of Pennsylvania. Great experience, learned a lot. After law school, I clerked for a year, and then I came down. I actually asked my judge to end my clerkship a month early so that I can come down and volunteer in the same unit right now, the voter protection team, as just like an intern for a month for the Stacey Abrams campaign. And so I came down here. I moved back home in September of 2018. And when I say to anyone, I've had many jobs in my life. But that month and a half where I was just interning and just trying to help out wherever I could was probably one of the most fulfilling 6 weeks I've ever had. Like it was, I mean, I'm sure you remember 2 years ago, it was just that much energy. I mean, you look around the room, it was that much diversity, just seeing some brilliant individuals come in and day out and recognize that they're doing something that's bigger than them. So I left there and I worked for a law firm for 2 years where I gained some really, really valuable experience. So in the middle of the pandemic, forces unseen, and I decided to come and work on the party because I recognize that, I hate this line, this is the most consequential election of our lifetime. I know you've heard it way too many times. I've heard that way too many times. It was just one of those things where I said to myself, this is going to be a game changer that I want to be a part of. And I was able to volunteer for a number of months. And actually, I interned on the voter protection team for a number of months. And recently they brought me onto staff, which was great because, I don't think any of us thought that after the election, Georgia would turn blue. And not only then would Georgia be the sweetheart of the nation because everyone's looking at us for the runoff for these two Senate seats. So I can't say to you that I mapped all of this out in July, but I can say to you that I'm looking at Jamil in July and saying, hey, it was a risk, but it's working out. I'm just being able to be a part of history, and that's amazing.
It's always good to look back at yourself and say that you made the right decision, right?
Yeah.
So the race down there is obviously very competitive. It's extremely close, and one of the things that I have kind of seen over the years is that the closer the election is, the more people are engaged in it. Um, so it's so important when these races are going to come down to the margins. I believe there's something like 12,000 votes for Biden, and every single action counts. And to that end, Jamil, if you could sort of tell us what you're doing down there, where you're doing it, and sort of like what a day in the life of your activities is like.
Okay, so again, I'm a part of the voter protection team. A number of individuals. You have a bunch of different teams on the voter protection team. For instance, there's a ballot cure team on the voter protection team, and the ballot cure is that anybody whose absentee ballot has been rejected, they're going to be in-person canvassers and individuals reaching out to those individuals to try to make sure that they cure those ballots and that their vote matters. There's a boiler room team here in Georgia. We have a boiler room full of attorneys that every day that there's in-person voting, there's a boiler room. So every day of early vote and on election day, and I have the opportunity to serve as one of the captains there as well. And so how that works is anytime at a lot of polling sites we have poll observers, and the poll observers will interact at that polling site and dial in issues into the boiler room. And as boiler room captains and attorneys, we basically just manage issues and just ensuring that each vote counts. We have a poll observer team. I mean, you'd be surprised that some of my colleagues, I mean, some are taking sabbaticals from their careers, some are using this as a way to steer their careers. But I'm so inspired because they've been able to break record numbers and have poll observers at a majority of the polling sites here in the state. And no other state has been able to say that. So for me, I'm a part of the voter education and community outreach team. So a part of my job is doing just this, ensuring that other people in the state of Georgia and outside of the state of Georgia know what options, what resources they have available to them. That's one. And two, ensure that people know where to come to and get out the appropriate facts. Let me give you an example. Before the general election, I was tasked with reaching out to all the colleges in the state of Georgia and making sure that the colleges had the right resources and information that they can pass along to their students. And you may not say, some may say, like, how is that important? Well, there's a time period when we heard from a college that students were taking their absentee ballots from and putting them in the drop box that's nearest to their campus. But they were taking absentee ballots from different states, absentee ballots from different counties. And as you know, you can only use the drop box in the county in which you are registered. So it was incumbent upon us to reach out to the Board of Elections for that particular county. And we got a great resolution there where the Board of Elections said, hey, these are students, we're going to do the best that we can. We're going to put the appropriate stamps and mail these off to the appropriate place that they want to go. That's just a small way to show that these things matter. And, these different teams that we have, and there are many more, I don't want to leave anything out, but we're just all just trying to make sure that everyone protect the vote and that everyone that wants to vote has their vote and has that opportunity and that vote counts.
It's so important. It's such important work, as we've been sort of saying, leading up to the November election and now as well. I think the biggest problem that a lot of organizations pushing for the vote are facing is just the lack of clarity for people. And it seems like you're there to correct that, right? I mean, it's not only the general sorts of roadblocks to voting that you face in any election, but this year in particular, there's just a lot of attempts to cloud up the information and how people should vote and how they should get their votes counted. So just amazing work there in elections, especially that are this tight these days. So ballot curing, making sure that students know where to drop off their ballots, making sure that they know the rules and regulations of votings. Jamil, how plugged in are people to this election are you seeing? And how does that compare, do you think, to the way that people were plugged in November? I mean, Georgia was such a huge state in the November election. And are you seeing the same level of enthusiasm and excitement for this one as the one in November?
I am, and I'm an optimist, but I'm like a realist at the same time. I'll never forget, right after the election, I was telling a colleague, I was like, oh man, I just don't feel the same energy. But I truly believe that was a byproduct of Georgia was trying to certify the election, and every single day there seems to be a challenge that didn't have an appropriate legal basis. But as soon as Georgia, there were plans being made, of course, but as soon as Georgia was able to say, all right, Georgia's blue, that's behind us. The energy just increased. The organizations and everything just fell into place so fast. Like even I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. And because now that Georgia's like the sweetheart of the nation at this particular point, I feel like I have law school professors and law school friends who've reached out and saying, hey, how can I volunteer? Where do I donate to? Hey, I have a family member who's in Georgia and they're having this particular question. What happens here? Oh, hey, I just moved to Georgia in December. Can I vote? And these are things that, it's just so important and it's so engaging because if we're being honest, 4 years ago, there was not as much energy surrounding this state. But now that we have two Senate seats, how often do you get that? It's not that often. We have two Senate seats. And there's another individual by the name of Daniel Blackman on the ballot who's running for Public Service Commission, which I think is also important. And the reason that I think it's important it's because there are some voters who can look at the two Senate seats and they'll think, oh, that's federal politics. What they do just won't trickle down to me. But the Public Service Commission is going to affect everyday Georgians, even myself included, their utilities bills. So we're able to tell those voters that, hey, this is going to affect you. Every month you look at your utility bill, that's going to be something that's a byproduct of the vote that you can make on January 5th. We have just such a great amount of energy here. I'm loving it, but I will say I can't wait till it's all over so I can get a good nap in.
I'm still waiting for that nap after the November 3rd election. One day it's going to come, Jamil. We'll get there. We'll get to sleep someday, I promise. But no, that's great work, and that is something that's been a little bit underreported with the Georgia election that I've sort of seen is that of course you've got Reverend Warnock, and then you've got John Ossoff, two great candidates, but then also Daniel Blackman. Here in Blue Revolution, we have members nationwide, and we're very interested and very passionate about getting Mitch McConnell out of power, of course. But these races are, from what I've seen, very much focused on local issues. Have you seen any others that people bring up or that you like to sort of pitch to other folks that you speak to?
I mean, I wouldn't say that they are directly local issues, but I think they have local impacts such as healthcare. I think that's just really big right now, especially since we're in the pandemic. And another local impact is, how each city's mayor and how the governor is handling the coronavirus and the pandemic, and the type of closures and the type of implementations that they put in place for schools and things of those natures. So I'd say healthcare, schools, and economics, even at a state level, are three things that are truly being talked about here in the state. But of course, you can mirror those on a national level, but I do think those things have to be talked about on a local level as well.
It's going to be such an incredibly huge difference between, whether President Biden faces two Democratic senators from Georgia or two Republicans. I mean, it's the difference is just going to be so huge. So
absolutely.
What are some of the challenges that you faced down there this year, Jamil? I mean, I know that there's always challenges with working on campaigns and working on voter education, but what are some of the things that you faced this year?
Okay, there are two things that I really want to speak about. We have signature matching laws here. And the signature matching, three things that are your signature on your actual ballot is going to be matched to. I believe it can be matched to your if you apply for your absentee ballot by paper, it's going to be matched to the signature there. If you applied for your voter registration by paper, it's going to be matched to the signature there. Or if you apply, let's say, it can also be applied to the signature that you have on your driver's license. What's the issue with that? I have the same driver's license since I was 16. My signature has changed a little bit since I was 16. I registered to vote when I was 18. I personally elect to vote early in person because I like to be able to experience I have the voting experience so that when we get calls into the boiler room, I'm able to say, okay, I understand what this voter is going through. I'm able to answer questions a little bit more. But you can imagine how these are issues that everyday voters are going through. And everyday voters, not every voter knows that, when your ballot is rejected, you have a cure period, and that cure period is going to go through to January 8th. And that's important because, again, when we're in an election where it could be a margin of something like 12,000 votes, that's not that many votes. Like we've seen small colleges that are bigger than that. Like that's just really not that many votes. And another thing is that there have been a slew of county voter challenges and counties. For instance, in a county like Gwinnett, there's a challenge of challenging over 15,000 voters. And in other counties, there's a challenge challenging over 35,000 voters. And these are things where attorneys here in the state and affiliate with the Democratic Party of Georgia are going to these counties right now, today and tomorrow, and fighting to ensure that these voters aren't kicked off the voter rolls. Like that's just it's like these are the same voters who just voted in the general election, but they're still being challenged for the runoff. And personally, it gets a little discouraging because it's become clear that it's not about democracy and making sure that everybody votes. It's become clear that it's about making sure that the only people that can vote are the people that are going to benefit a particular party.
Right. I don't think I've ever seen or read about or known about any election year in which democracy itself is an issue on the ballot. And the folks who are doing this work, and as I said, sort of clearing up the confusion, are just like heroes of democracy for all time, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I really do think that we'll look back to this election, both in the general election, but particularly in this Georgia runoff, which is the most important runoff that we've seen in decades in this country, and we will look back at the folks who are clearing things up, like you, Jamil. So, thank you so much for all this work that you're doing. I wanted to also ask, if we've got a lot of members here in Blue Revolution who are in Georgia or around Georgia, what would you recommend? Where would you send these folks? What direction would you point them in to help out with this effort that you're engaged in?
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that question. If you're in Georgia and you feel comfortable going outside, um, I would ask you to go to georgiademocrat.org, and there you'll be able to go to voter protection, and you'll be able to go to voter protection volunteer opportunities. And what you'll see there is that we are always looking for in-person canvassers. There's a colleague of mine, she's an attorney, I mean, just absolutely amazing, who runs that program. And she's leading a team of individuals who are going to individuals whose ballots have been rejected and helping them cure their ballots. That's just important because I've heard of stories where individuals who, have had, knock on your door, hey, we're here to help you cure your ballot. And the individual may not even know their ballot was rejected. Like, just imagine you turned in your absentee ballot for some reason or not. You didn't check ballot tracks or MVP, or maybe you didn't get the phone call, even if the county even called, and you think you voted and you didn't because your ballot was rejected. So I think that's just critical. So anybody in the state of Georgia, who's open and willing, please go to georgiademocrat.org. You'll be able to go to voter protection and then voter protection volunteer opportunities. I personally think that's just so important and so critical.
Great. So we'll put that up on the screen too. It's georgiademocrat.org, and then go to voter protection, volunteer opportunities. And again, you're doing ballot curing there. So, one of the things that you sort of think about when you are trying to get people to vote is that voting costs time and money and effort for people. So if they don't know that their ballot was rejected, that takes a lot of time and efforts that they might have to take out of their day, working and taking care of families and things like that, and they have to go check. And it's just the infrastructure that you have there is there to kind of pick up these costs, really, right? To sort of make sure that you're going and letting folks know that they need to cure their ballot, they need to fix their ballot. Great work down there. And Jamil, what about folks who are outside of Georgia?
Yes, absolutely. I guess I probably should have said this for anybody, for inside or outside the state. If you're able and willing, we can always use your donations, right? And you can do that to the Democratic Party of Georgia. But if you're outside of the state, I would think that your best opportunity would be to have a phone bank, and you will be able to find many opportunities to be a part of a phone bank. I mean, there are phone banks in different languages. There are phone banks for specific age groups, like the college students. There are phone banks for veterans. If you have a specialty, we can find something and find a way for you to help out. I think so. If you're in the state and you're open and willing, ballot curing. If you're out of the state, you're open and willing, phone banking. And if you are in the state, out of the state, but you think this is important, donations.
Great. So in-state ballot curing, out-of-state phone banking, everybody donations. I like it.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I may steal that, but I'll make sure I always give you credit.
Sounds good. I don't need it, but if you do, that's fine too. Well, Jamil, thank you so much for being on Blue Revolution. Again, you are just doing the work of the universe down there, and everyone, all 94,000 of us are just so happy and so thankful that folks like you are down there doing this work and saving democracy. Honestly, I mean, I know that sounds grandiose, but that is exactly what you're doing right now. And we just can't thank you enough for all your work and for coming on the show. Thank you so much, Jamil.
Thank you as well. We really appreciate your time.